Welcome to Crime Files TikTok Compilations, the vault of real horror, where murder isn't fiction and the footage never lies. In this collection, we unearth chilling clips, haunting case files, and real-life moments that expose the darkest corners of the human mind. What you're about to witness is raw, unsettling, and unforgettable. These aren't stories, they're warnings.
Was your throat cut?
Yeah. Oh.
Grandma?
Oh my God.
I'm not gonna ask any questions right now until we move.
She promised her mom she would never sneak out again, but the very next day she went missing, and I think we know who did it. Her name is Kayla Berg, and what happened to her still haunts everyone who hears it. That night, Kayla told her mom that she was staying at her friend Natasha's house, but that wasn't the plan, not even close. They wanted to go to a party, one with older boys, drinks, and everything that their parents would have said no to. So they pulled the oldest trick out of the book. Kayla told her mom she was staying at Natasha. Natasha told her mom she was staying at Kayla's, and it worked. The girls made it to the party, but what makes this worse is Kayla didn't have a phone, so when she didn't make it home that night, nobody could reach her. It's now the next morning, and Kayla's mom, Hope, is calling everyone. She calls Natasha's mom, and that's when it both hits them. They've been lied to, and both their daughters are missing. Hope files a missing persons report immediately, but later that same day, Kayla walks straight through the front door saying that she lost track of time. I mean, her mom is obviously furious, but she's a mother first, so all she can do is be thankful that her daughter is alive and safe. So she made Kayla promise to never sneak out again, but the next day, she disappears, except this time, nobody would ever see Kayla alive again. That day, she went to go visit her father, James. Quick backstory, her parents are separated and her father is battling cancer. It was a lot for her to handle, so she made sure to check in with him from time to time. At around 8:30 p.m., a man named Kevin, who's 24 by the way, picks her up. She kisses her dad goodbye and gets into his car. Now, Kevin isn't just some stranger. I mean, he is 24 years old hanging with a 15-year-old, but he's basically part of the family. At 9:30 p.m., Kayla stops by McDonald's to visit her friend Beth, who's working night shift. Beth remembers it like it was yesterday. She says that Kayla pulled up in Kevin's Jeep, but only Kayla came inside. She told Beth that she was planning to hang out with Kevin and that she would call her after shift, but that call never came, and that was the last time anyone ever saw Kayla alive again. The next morning, Kayla's dad realizes that she's never come home yet, and at first he's just thinking, oh, she's pulling that same stunt from the night before, but then hours go by, and that's when panic starts settling in. He calls Kevin, and his answer only made things worse. He says he dropped Kayla off, but doesn't remember where, he doesn't know the address, and he doesn't know the friend's name. Tell me that doesn't sound suspicious. Later that day, James calls Hope, but she doesn't answer, so he leaves a message, and the next day, Hope hears that message, but this time her gut was screaming that something was seriously wrong. She starts her own research, asking anyone and everyone who might know who this mysterious friend was. She calls Kevin, but he doesn't answer, and then hours later, he sends a text message. Yes, a text message. Not a phone call, a text. He says his phone was dead and sticks to the same story that he told Kayla's dad. That he dropped her off at a house that was dark, no lights on, and doesn't know the address. Days pass and Kayla still isn't home, so her mom has no choice once again to report her missing. At first, police listed her as an endangered runaway, but as more time passes, things just stop making sense. Kevin's story kept changing. At first, he's like, I don't remember where she went, I don't remember. But then afterwards, he was like, wait, actually, I dropped her off at her ex-boyfriend Miguel's house. Except Miguel didn't live there, and Kayla knew that. The house was abandoned. They weren't even dating anymore, so why would she ask to be dropped off there? Police checked Kevin's location, and guess what? It was either dead, turned off, or not working the entire time he was with Kayla. So there's literally zero proof that he took her to that house. How convenient for him. Police search his house, his car, his phone records. They find things, but nothing that leads to Kayla. Kevin tells police he went straight home that night. His mom backs up his alibi, obviously, but beyond that, there's nothing to actually support it. And when police start pressing him harder, he lawyers up. They tried hitting him with minor charges like reckless driving and endangering a minor, hoping that he would crack under the pressure, but Kevin pled not guilty and those charges were dismissed. Police knew he was hiding something, but they couldn't prove it, so they shifted their focus to Miguel, and he didn't help either. They say he never reached out to the family, he never helped search for her, and Kayla's mom said that she found that very odd of him. Unfortunately, the case went cold for years until 2016. this really creepy video titled "Hi Walter" started going viral. A man in the video starts talking about meeting a girl at the mall, and in the background there's a girl tied up in the room behind him. The internet exploded saying that she looked just like Kayla, and it was so convincing that even the FBI started investigating it. But the video turned out to be fake. The girl was an actor, and that false hope nearly broke Kayla's family all over again. But they did say if there was one good thing that came out of that, it was the fact that more people learned Kayla's name. To this day, Kayla is still missing and we don't know what happened. But if you ask her family, they'll tell you exactly who they think knows the truth, and his name is Kevin. But what do you guys think happened? Is Kevin actually hiding something, or is he an innocent man that just so happened to see her last?
Catalina Gutierrez sent her boyfriend a voice note. She said, "I'm on my way, love. I'll see you soon." But sadly, this became her last message, and she never arrived to meet her friends at a bowling alley as she planned. She was a 21-year-old girl who lived in Cordoba, Argentina, and on the night of Wednesday, July 17, 2024, she was planning to meet up with friends at a bowling alley in a shopping center. She left her parents' house at 9 p.m. in her mom's Renault Clio. At 9:12 p.m., she sent what became her final voice note, and she was planning on swinging by her friend Nestor Soto's house. She was picking him up and then heading to the bowling alley, but sadly, she never arrived, and as time ticked by, her friends became more and more concerned. And in the early morning hours of Thursday, July 18th, she was reported missing. Later that same day, they located Catalina's car. It had a smoky smell to it, and when investigators opened the door, they were stunned with what they found inside. Her partially charred remains were in the back seat of the car. It was clear that whoever had done this to Catalina had tried to set the car ablaze in order to erase evidence, but the fire didn't take. And the medical examiner determined that she had been beaten and strangled to death. So this is Nestor Soto, and he was Catalina's school friend, and she was planning on swinging by his house to pick him up. He actually went to the police station with her family to report her missing. He told investigators that Catalina had never arrived to his house to pick him up. However, surveillance videos show that her car was in the direction of Nestor's house at 9:17 p.m. Further evidence proved that Catalina's phone was in the vicinity of Nestor's neighborhood for 38 minutes on the night she was murdered. And when he was confronted with this highly damning evidence, he suddenly changed his story. This time he mentioned, "Oh no, Catalina had stopped by just for a brief moment, but then she left." This was highly suspicious, and investigators were certain that they were looking at the person responsible for her murder. Internet search history proved that Nestor had been lurking about Catalina's social media pages. He was looking up information about her relationship with her boyfriend Lazaro. As investigators dug deeper into his background, they learned that he had a very obsessive nature about him. They spoke with 4 of his classmates as well as an ex-girlfriend, and it showed that he did not take no for an answer. He became obsessed with these girls, and he refused to be rejected by them. When another girl ended the relationship, he became obsessed with her, and it was clear that he was tracking her as he would show up wherever she happened to be. And when security footage was reviewed in the days before Catalina's murder, it proved that Nestor had been trolling around her house. Slowly but surely, as investigators continued to question this man, his lies began to crumble and the truth came out. Since Catalina was swinging by his house that night to pick him up, he decided to take his opportunity to profess his love to her. And it was his idea that she would see the light, realize that her current boyfriend was not the right one for her, and that Nestor and her were destined to be together. She was kind but firm when she rejected him, and at that moment, he completely snapped. Investigators believe, based on the evidence in this case, that she was attacked inside his house and then moved to her mom's car once she was unconscious. Security footage depicted Nestor removing Catalina's lifeless body from his home, and then other evidence proved that her rings were torn off at his house as well as her hair, which proved that there was a violent struggle. Nestor Soto was charged with aggravated homicide as well as gender violence, which is known as femicide. During the trial, he suddenly changed his story and indicated that Catalina was actually an aggressor toward him because he wasn't ready when she came to pick him up. He said they eventually started fighting, and then he put her in a chokehold. Nestor Soto acknowledged that he murdered Catalina, and his defense team argued that this case should be considered a simple homicide rather than femicide, which carries a harsher sentence. But in March of 2025, the jury found Nestor Soto guilty of femicide, and he was given a life sentence. On the night her life ended, Catalina Gutierrez had no idea that she was in danger. She was just swinging by to pick up a friend, somebody that she trusted, someone who had been to her home countless times. And it was clear that this man was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and her family is forever grateful that justice has been served. This sweet little girl vanished on her way to school in 1982, and her killer wasn't convicted until 43 years later. This is 5-year-old Ann Pham, and she lived with her family in Seaside, California. She was one of 10 children, and she wanted desperately to establish her independence. Normally, her mom or her brother would walk her to school, but on the morning of Thursday, January 21st, 1982, Ann begged and pleaded for them to allow her to walk the 0.2 miles by herself. She closed the door behind her just before 11 a.m. and set out, never to be seen again. It wasn't until dinner time that Ann's large family realized that she hadn't come home from school, and when they called the school, they realized that she hadn't made it that day. No one had even seen her along the busy route that led to the school. 2 days later, military police were searching Fort Ord after they received a tip about illegal marijuana growing, and this is when they tragically found Ann's body. Investigators were baffled by what could have happened to Ann because it was such a short walk, it was a busy route, and Ann was a very careful and shy girl, and her family didn't believe that under any circumstances she would have stopped and gotten into someone's car. With this, they believe that whatever happened to Ann that day happened very quickly. Someone probably grabbed her and quickly put her in their car. Despite their intensive search efforts, this case sadly went cold. It wasn't until 2020 that the Cold Case Task Force reopened Ann's case after they had received a grant. Investigators learned that a tiny centimeter-long piece of hair found on Ann's body was sufficient for DNA testing and genealogical databases. With this, a forensic genetic genealogist with Parabon Nanolabs was able to produce a genetic network that produced a surname for the suspect. And the same name kept recurring, and this was the name Leno. Investigators further searched for a suspect who could have been in the area at the time that Ann was murdered in 1982, and they came up with this monster, Robert Leno. He lived a mere 60 feet from the Pham home in 1982. He actually had a child that went to the same school as Ann, the place that she was headed to that morning, and never made it. At the time of her murder, he was stationed at the military base there, and he would have been 29 years old. And he was a despicable human being who was a registered sex offender living in Nevada. He was actually behind bars at the time that police came up with his name. When he was interviewed on July 6, 2022, he indicated that he may have picked Ann up that day, but he doesn't recall murdering her because he could have mentally blocked it out in order to protect himself. But further DNA testing further confirmed that he was the monster who not only murdered but sexually assaulted 5-year-old Ann. And in February of 2025, 72-year-old Leno pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, kidnapping, and sex crimes against a child. In March of 2025, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison plus an additional 31 years, which means that he will rot for the rest of his disgusting days behind bars. In January of 1982, sweet little Ann just wanted to be independent. She was described as a sweet, good student who was always on time for school. But sadly that day, she never made it. As we scroll through social media, we truly never know what's going on behind a smiling face or a perfectly polished front door, and sometimes it could be a true darkness lurking. On the morning of Thursday, August 10th, 2023, 31-year-old Spencer Moen contacted 911 at 7:38 a.m. He told authorities from the West Fargo Police Department that his 30-year-old wife, Sonia Moen, was lying in the bathtub, unresponsive and not breathing. As first responders met Spencer, he led them upstairs to the primary bathroom. He indicated that his wife wanted to take a bath or a shower the night before. She'd vomited and then ended up sleeping in the bathtub. As authorities were led to the bathroom in question, they found Sonia bruised and battered, lying fully clothed in the bathtub. Meanwhile, officers noted bruising to Spencer's knuckles on his right hand. Tragically, Sonia, who was a mother of 3 and a nurse, was pronounced dead at the scene. She had a boy and a girl who were 5. They were twins, an 11-year-old daughter. Sonia and Spencer had been together for 17 years at this point. When he was brought down to the station, officers learned that the previous day, this was Wednesday, Spencer had been at a golf tournament the entire day. He ended his night at a brewery. He was so intoxicated at the brewery that he actually got cut off by the bartenders. Sonia picked him up from the brewery and they stopped by their friend's house. Apparently, Spencer and the friends got into a little disagreement about flooring he had done at their house. But by the time they left, all was well. They stopped off at a place to get sandwiches and they were home by about 10 p.m. When Spencer was asked how Sonia got such significant bruising to her face, he indicated that she was also drunk and she face planted as she entered the house from the garage. However, toxicology reports would later show that this was a blatant lie. Sonia's blood alcohol level was only 0.03%. Keep in mind that the legal limit is 0.08, so she probably had maybe a drink at some point in the day, but she certainly wasn't intoxicated. He claimed that after he put the twins to bed, they began arguing in the garage and Sonia started to hit him in the head. He said their daughter came back downstairs, he brought her back up to bed and decided to go to sleep himself. He said while he was laying in bed trying to sleep, Sonia came upstairs and pounced on him and began to punch him. He said that in order to defend himself, he pushed his wife away from him by the throat and began to close fist punch her in the head about 3 to 4 times. And according to Spencer, it was at this point he sustained the bruising that officers saw to his right knuckles. They tumbled to the ground at some point, and then Sonia stood up and said, "F you, I'm going to take a shower," and she marched into the bathroom. Spencer claimed that he heard some sort of scuffle in the bathroom, like maybe Sonia falling into the bathtub, but he didn't go in and check on her at that point. When he did eventually go into the bathroom, he said he found his wife lying in the tub. She wasn't speaking, but he knew she was alive because she was making noises. He said he started pouring water on her head in order to get her up so he could take her to bed, but she wouldn't wake up. So he decided to just go to bed, and then the next morning he woke up and took the kids to school. But before he did, he checked on Sonia and she was still unresponsive in the bathtub. He said he reached down and touched her. She was cold to the touch, but regardless, he still took the kids to school without dialing 911. When he came back and she was still unresponsive, he called Sonia's mom rather than contacting emergency services, and she's the one that told him to hang up and dial 911, which he did. Since the 5-year-old children were home on the night before, police brought them in for questioning, and they indicated that they saw their mom and dad wrestling around the floor and that their mom's blood was on their dad's face. Their older daughter wasn't home at the time, but she called her mom's phone at 10:27 and again at 10:41 p.m., but rather than her mom picking up, her dad did. She said that while she was speaking with her dad, she could hear her mom snoring in the background. However, when investigators spoke with Spencer about this, he claimed that their daughter never even called. When investigators began looking through Spencer's phone, they saw highly disturbing evidence. Investigators found a video recording on Spencer's phone that depicted Sonia lying in the bathtub, and it was time-stamped for Wednesday night at 11:37 p.m. She was lying in the opposite direction as to how authorities found her on Thursday morning, and this was in direct contrast to what Spencer said, that he had never moved his wife's body. They could hear that she was having a terrible time breathing, and this supported their 11-year-old daughter's reports of hearing her mom snoring when she called her phone. This is what's known as agonal breathing, which is what happens when someone is near death. Sonia's autopsy proved that she had died from blunt force trauma to the head. Her manner of death was homicide, and despite the fact that Spencer claimed that his wife had attacked him, other than the wounds to his knuckles, he had no other injuries to his body. Spencer was arrested for his wife's murder, and the trial began in October of 2024. Their twins, who were now 6 years old at the time, took the stand against their father. They indicated that they saw their parents wrestling. They tried to get their dad to stop. They even tried to call 911, but it was sadly too late. Spencer was found guilty, and on December 30th, 2024, he was sentenced to life in prison. These poor children are now left without a mom as well as a dad, and they're now being taken care of by their grandparents. This case only highlights the fact that we never truly know what's going on behind closed doors. Alicia Bromfield was nearly 7 months pregnant when she left to attend a wedding with her boss that she was coerced into going to, and she never came back. Alicia was working within the Home Depot garden department during the summer months in Plainfield, Illinois, and her supervisor was 36-year-old Brian Cooper. Despite their 15-year age gap and the fact that Alicia was pregnant with another man's baby, this did not deter Brian from constantly harassing her. She was one short semester away from graduating with a forensic psychology degree, but in the meantime, she was working as many hours as she possibly could in order to prepare for becoming a single mom. Alicia had been working with Brian Cooper over the past 5 years, and he was outwardly aggressive with her and other employees. He was known to berate her in the presence of customers and other employees and call her disparaging names and even throw things at her sometimes. And despite the fact that she complained to upper management, nothing was done. As August of 2012 rolled around, Cooper told Alicia that his sister was getting married in Door County, Wisconsin, and she was going to attend as his date. And if she didn't, he would fire her. Her mom, Sherry, was highly uncomfortable with this situation, but her daughter assured her that they were staying at a hotel where the rest of the bridesmaids and groomsmen were also staying. But when they left on Friday, August 17th, Alicia sent her mom a text and let her know that Brian had lied. They weren't staying at the same hotel as the others. They had a room with 2 separate beds at the Sand Bay Resort. As the day wore on, as did Alicia's patience with his ongoing persistence and harassment. She told him that when they got home after the wedding, they would have nothing more than a work-employee relationship. There would be no more hangouts after work. There would be no more dog sitting on Alicia's end. And as the night progressed and the wedding continued, Brian got increasingly intoxicated. Alicia was just done. She wanted to go to sleep, wake up, and go home away from this guy. And as she peacefully slept, this lunatic continued to drink and pace around the hotel like a caged animal. And with this, he thought of ways in how he could harm Alicia. He walked into the room where she was sleeping, woke her up, and asked her if when they got home they could watch a TV show together, and once again she reminded him that their friendship was done. With this, Brian leapt on Alicia and began to strangle her. She screamed and fought back, begging him to stop, if only for the sake of her unborn baby girl, Ava Lucille. The next day, Brian Cooper walked into a gas station and asked the clerk if he could utilize her phone, and with this, he dialed 911 and reported the fact that he had murdered Alicia Bromfield. He was brought into the station and fully confessed and told the detective that it was his full intention to kill her. When the trial began, there was no doubt that he was guilty of Alicia's murder, but he claimed that because he was intoxicated, he was unable to form intent. Alicia's mom was sickened and disgusted when 2 female jurors decided that he was not guilty because he was intoxicated, and this resulted in a hung jury. And during the trial, it was brought to light that Brian Cooper was fully obsessed with Alicia. He had planted hidden cameras in not only the hotel where they were staying in Door County, but also at his house so that he could capture images of her in the bathroom when she was there dog sitting for him. So now her family was forced to wait yet another year for the second trial to begin. And here he continued to insist that because he was intoxicated, he was not guilty. But thankfully, this time around, the jury members found him guilty of 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide for both the murders of Alicia and her unborn daughter. Sherry turned her grief and anger into action by making changes in Wisconsin's voluntary intoxication law. It was her goal that voluntary intoxication could not be used as a defense for murder. And in 2014, not only did she get the law changed in Wisconsin, but also 31 other states. At the time of her violent death, Alicia's life was brimming with possibility. She was so close to graduation. She was expecting her baby girl, Ava Lucille. And Brian Cooper will spend the rest of his days behind bars after he received 2 consecutive life sentences.
On March 6, 1981, inside a courtroom in Lubeck, Germany, a murder trial was underway. 35-year-old Klaus Grabowski sat at the defendant's bench, charged with the rape and murder of a 7-year-old girl. Among the people watching that day was a woman in her mid-30s, sitting silently with her hands in her lap. Her name was Marianne Backmeyer. She was the mother of the girl Grabowski had killed, and in her handbag was a loaded pistol. Flashback to May 5, 1980, Marianne's daughter, Anna, was a bright, curious 7-year-old. That morning, she and her mom had gotten into a small argument, and Anna, upset, decided to skip school. She wandered around her Lebec neighborhood, eventually stopping by the home of a man she knew, Klaus Grabowski. Grabowski lived just down the street. Anna loved his cats and had visited his home before. To her, he wasn't a threat. He was a friendly neighbor with animals. But what she didn't know was that Grabowski was a convicted sex offender. In the 1970s, he assaulted multiple young girls and even tried to strangle a 6-year-old. And guys, despite all of this, he was living freely on probation. That afternoon, he lured Anna inside. He kept her there for hours, ate her, and then strangled her to death. When Anna didn't come home that night, Marianne reported her missing. The next day, police got a call. It was Grabowski's fiance. She said he confessed to killing Anna. Within hours, police found Anna's body stuffed into a cardboard box and dumped beside a canal. Grabowski had fled but left a note saying he'd meet his fiance at a local pub. Police were waiting. They arrested him that night. Fast forward to his trial. Grabowski tried to justify his murder, claiming that Anna tried to blackmail him. According to him, the 7-year-old girl said that if he didn't give her money, she would tell her mother that he had abused her. Marianne sat through all of it. For 10 months, she visited her daughter's grave and planned. She purchased a small Barrett 22 pistol from the black market and hid it beneath the earth. And on March 6, 1981, she brought it to court. As the judge called for a break, Marianne quietly stood from her seat, walked forward, and pulled a pistol from her purse. Grabowski was sitting just 10 feet in front of her, facing the judge. She raised a gun and pulled the trigger 7 times. 6 bullets struck Grabowski in the back. He collapsed to the floor, bleeding out in front of the entire courtroom. And guys, witnesses say Marianne's face was wet with tears, but her hands never shook. She didn't try to run. She just stood there, lowered the weapon, and said, "He killed my daughter. I wanted to shoot him in the face, but I shot him in the back. I hope he dies." She was arrested on the spot. Her trial made headlines around the world. In the end, the court found her guilty of premeditated manslaughter. She was sentenced to 6 years but only served 3. After her release in 1986, she moved to Nigeria, then Sicily, and eventually returned to Germany, where she died of cancer in 1996 at just 46 years old. She was buried beside her daughter, Anna.
Today, authorities found the rotting bodies of Francis and Donald Fox Sr. inside of their family home. They had been shot in the head and killed by their own son right before he turned the gun on himself and took his own life.
To this day, there is no motive for the murder. It appears to have been completely random.
He took a shotgun, shot his dad while he was in bed, shot his mom in the dining room, then went into his bedroom and shot himself. The bodies weren't found for days, and there was just blood everywhere. In 2016, there was a violent incident. There was so much blood that they had to move the individual into the dining room. And we started ripping up flooring, and we uncovered this stain.
Why did he murder his parents?
Hopefully you guys can figure that out, because no one really knows why.
The woman who died here most recently, that case is still open.
That case is still open. All right, Junior, I'm coming in, bringing some friends.
Oh, oh, oh.
This is the sword that was used on the attack. Blood was splattered throughout the house.
Shot himself.
I'm very lonely here.
Oh. This whole thing is actually blood.
Yep, this is the murder weapon.
Everyone goes on about Jack the Ripper, but do you know Mary Ann Cotton? She was wild. Mary and her husband William had 5 kids, but they would sadly all die of the stomach flu. So they had more kids, but sadly within a year, 2 of the 3 would die of the stomach flu. So her husband takes out a life insurance policy on the family, which at this point just makes sense, but he too would succumb to symptoms relating to the stomach flu. In the 1800s, people were often malnourished, they were exposed to like everything, and so dying of the stomach flu or gastric fever was like the go-to diagnosis. However, the symptoms of the stomach flu are suspiciously similar to the symptoms of arsenic poisoning. Mary played the part of mourning mother perfectly while she poisoned their tea and collected their life insurance checks. Mary would kill 11 of her 13 children, 3 of her 4 husbands, her mother, a stranger's baby, 3 of her 4 stepchildren, her sister-in-law, her secret lover. They all died of gastric fever.
Conclusion. Hit that subscribe button to join a community that refuses to forget. Like this video to keep these stories alive. Share it to spread awareness. And drop a comment with your thoughts. Who do you think was really behind it? Or what part shocked you most?